Altaf, are we live on Facebook?
Almost. I'm just filling in the details. Gotta put it in the title for the piece today.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, guys. Ahlan wa sahlan. Marhaban. Welcome to this live stream, guys. This is the 3 dates, and now it's 4 dates with our guest. Alhamdulillah. So let us know if it's working, if you guys can see, if you guys can hear. Hopefully it should be working. Sound, alhamdulillah. This time, guys, toot. The sound hasn't been bad past 3 weeks. We haven't had any technical issues, and the sound in my side should be even better because I actually fitted in. Can you see the back? I fitted in these sound echo reducing pads, and there's such a headache trying to install these. Trust me, man, they keep falling off the wall. I don't know what to do. So if anyone has any tips of how to keep them on the wall, these help the sound.
Can you show us? Sorry, Mufti Sam.
Sorry.
What are they? Can you
So
show
it's
us?
basically these.
Okay.
Yes, these, and you gotta fit them together, and you just gotta put them on the wall. And what it does basically is, the echo in the room, it reduces them. So you got a curtain behind you, haven't you? So that's why
Why don't you do this?
You can't hear
Why
echo.
don't you do this? Sit down and show us an echo, and then why don't you stand up and show us an echo?
MashaAllah. Well done. Okay.
Why don't you show us how it works from different parts of the room and have live?
Yeah, maybe some other time, guys. Maybe some other time, maybe. Yeah. Okay, mashallah, we've got Angela Smith, mashallah, from the US, and Mystic Minds from the Philippines watching. Alhamdulillah. Ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome, guys. Right, Altaf, you on Facebook?
Yep, we're live.
Yeah, so shall I share?
Yes, please do.
So, we have with us our guest, Dr. Mutaher. And Dr. Mutaher, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Let our audience know who is our guest today. I mean, we want to praise you with all the praises, yeah? Hazrat Allama Al-Aqdas, yeah? Or is it DB? Is it DOB? What is it? What do they have at the end of the names? Is it DOB, DB? Altaf should know.
DB.
DB, yeah. DB, bro.
Damat barakatum, man.
Yeah.
MashaAllah. So Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm a GP. I work mainly in the Black Country. I've been probably qualified about 10 years now. I've worked in and around Birmingham. I'm actually an educator, so I teach mainly medical students. I supervise and train foundation doctors or junior doctors. And I train also doctors who want to become GPs. So my actual role is a training program director, and I do that for the Black Country. So there's about like 60 doctors that I teach and train. That's it, yeah.
Alhamdulillah. And by the way, guys, the reason we brought Mutaher on as well is because Mutaher is also studying with us. Alhamdulillah, he's doing the Alimiya course. And, we thought that it'd be a good idea to have someone who has a bit of experience in understanding, Islamic sort of like texts and the approach and a bit of insight into how we look at things from an Islamic point of view. So at least he can guide us in this. Because you know what, guys? Let me tell you guys, before, I don't know, Altaf might have some experience and Naveed might have, but I am like the biggest jahil here when it comes to mental health. And the reason is because it's simply I haven't really studied it from a modern sort of academic perspective. My experience is a totally Islamic one, or from just like a first-hand experience with certain individuals in my family, close family, or friends who are people who do experience such issues. So this is why I think it's going to be a good idea to speak to Dr. Mutaher today, and we can get a bit of insight, because a lot of times what happens, guys, is, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it's as though every Maulana seems to, or it's considered that every Maulana should know about mental health. And I agree, Maulanas to a degree should know about mental health in the community because they are answering people's questions, and a lot of the questions are related to this topic. But the sad thing is that the real people who do know about this and have got a lot of experience in it are the doctors. And from my own experience, when I've spoken to people about certain issues, they always seem to consider going to the doctors as being a last resort, right? It's always like, first of all, go to the Maulana will figure it out, and last resort, when nothing works and they're in the last stages or whatever you want to call it, they'll resort to a doctor, and sometimes it might be too late, and sometimes damage might have been done. So this is why I think it's very good to have. I don't know, Naveed, do you have any experience in this area?
Probably more in line of being a victim than having any experience of it. To be honest with you, just off the back of that, cracking a joke in general, but to be honest with you, I think a lot of us go through some sort of mild form of depression or some sort of mental illness, what it's considered a mental illness, maybe in a very mild or a slight form. So I'm aware some of my friends obviously been through tough life experiences. Sometimes you hear them out, but in terms of from a professional capacity or actually acknowledging that it's happened to someone, we've got a lot of people in our family that have suffered from some sort of mental health. Some people, I think they were given some type of medicine. I think it was Prozac or something like that. I don't know the name of the actual drugs or whatnot, but we had a few cousins that had kind of like I don't know what the correct term to use is, but they used to suffer from fits, and obviously it started off mental, but then the whole body would start shaking. So I've seen it all my life, but I know very little about it, to be totally honest with yourself.
Yeah. So okay. So first of all, let's start off the. I don't know. I mean, Mutahir, from your own experience, you're a GP, you've got 10 years experience, you actually train. I don't know how much that would help, that you train other doctors up. So do you kind of like have to have a special type of training when you're dealing with mental health issues, from sort of issues related to the physical body?
Yeah, so as a GP, a general practitioner, so you need to know the basics of mental health. I should say this as a disclaimer, I'm not an expert in mental health, so that's your psychiatrists and things like that. So they're more had done your medical degree, but then gone on to specialize in psychiatry, which is to deal with mental health. But as a GP, you see a lot of mental health issues, and mental health is it's a broad term, so it includes a lot of it's an umbrella term, so a lot of conditions or diagnoses that fall under that bracket. So yeah.
So what kind of, when you say it's a broad topic, give us some examples of, what kind of conditions, or I mean, maybe the names of these conditions might not be something familiar to us, or maybe some sort of symptoms.
Yeah, I mean, so you probably heard of like depression itself. That's anxiety. Yeah, you probably heard of OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. But it stems from that to like schizophrenia. You got eating disorders, even postnatal depression. So there's a whole big spectrum of conditions that fall under mental health, and the symptoms vary. So there are a lot of symptoms, and it's important to be aware of those so people can get educated and seek help when they need it.
And how do you deal, like if a patient comes to you, how do you diagnose if it's a mental disorder or if it's some maybe some other, like, okay, let's say for example there's a person going through a particular situation in life, maybe to do with their work or to do with their spouse or to do with the children. How would you differentiate between something being like, is stress a mental disorder you deal with?
So stress is very common. So people handle stress differently. Mental health is to do with the way you think, you feel, and you act or behave. And we all think, feel, and act, behave differently. So people who have a mental health problem, they may not be able to cope with stress in the way that the average person does, and so that may impact them. And vice versa. You might have like a really stressful event, and like someone mentioned, like something happened to them. If it's really bad, like really traumatic, then that can cause a mental health problem. So you gotta weigh it up.
Okay, so I mean, as someone who answers people's questions when it comes to from the Islamic side, sometimes what I tend to find is that a lot of sort of like problems that people are facing, I can tell, I mean, I'm not obviously an expert, but I can tell the underlying issue is some sort of like issue related to some sort of mental problem that the person's going through. So, in these kind of situations, that what would you advise to the average person in how to deal with various sort of degrees of mental? So, for example, let's start with stress. For example, how would you kind of tell people to deal with that?
Yeah. So I never really answered your previous question, which was how do we actually diagnose or differentiate if it's
Okay,
like stress or so. Just going back to that, which might help answer this question, is taking what medics do is they take a history, so they ask certain questions, so they go and delve into people's lives, asking personal questions, about their stresses, about their work life, and then based on my medical experience, I can differentiate what is a medical or contain like an organic problem compared to like a mental health problem. Yeah. So my training allows me to do that. Now, you can treat the symptoms, but you like you said, you want to treat the cause. So because mental health is so broad, depending on what the problem is, you want to treat it with the right thing. It could be medication, it could be just talking therapies that are available, it could be something else completely, just a lifestyle change. Yeah, so it could be going away from that stress. So the stress could be like from work or something. It might be they need to take a break from work.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting. So this is actually in itself something that can actually, because if you think about from an Islamic point of view, that actually to me makes a lot of sense, because like narrations of the Prophet ﷺ where a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, give me some advice, and the Prophet ﷺ said, don't get angry, and he kept on repeating this to him, don't get angry, don't get angry, don't get angry. So it was like, it's interesting because you can't, you kind of like, how do you not get angry? You can't just switch it off, the anger. And the commentators say that what he was saying to the man was, don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to aggravate yourself and make yourself angry for no reason. So I think this is something where, like, if you look at it from an Islamic point of view, like not an Islamic point of view, but a popular understanding of an Islamic point of view, a lot of people tend to see like striving for the deen, working as hard as you can, like taking a holiday, they wouldn't see as being something that is conducive towards your Islam. Does that make sense? And it's like you've got this image of a Muslim that's been created. He tires himself out. So I think when a lot of people tend to create this image inside of their minds about the believer as someone that never gives up and exhausts, and then we hear stories of Sahaba who went through lots of difficulties. I think because we don't see the Sahaba as being human, and we don't see this sort of like stress element narrated in the narrations regarding, they must have gone through stress, they must have gone through, breakdowns, they must have gone through so much problem. Because, think about PTSD, for instance. It's a fairly common thing, isn't it, nowadays? It's like, I mean, from my own personal sort of like reading of whatever I've read and articles and documentaries, it seems to be something that's now being like extended to other things as well. So like, generally you associate to people that have just returned from battles, wars. It could be someone that's been experienced maybe like a terrorist attack or something. Or it could be someone that's been in a violent, relationship with someone, or some sort of abuse. And then like the after effects of that, we don't tend to think that the after effects are something that can actually have a very, like, a bad impact on their salat. Like, you never think that. You think to yourself, salat should cure everything. But it's like, wait a minute. I mean, if people are seriously going through problems in life, PTSD, for example. I don't know, what does PTSD stand for? Post-trauma?
Traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah. So what does it really apply to?
So when a massive stress has occurred, like you mentioned, a battle or a war, so someone's come back from maybe a veteran or something that's come back and he's like scarred or shocked by what he's seen in the war zone, and that just stays with him. So he can't get to sleep because he's thinking about it and it's affecting his life. He gets anxious. So it really affects their life, their well-being.
Oh, subhanallah. To be honest, I really came across this and I really started to kind of like read into this roughly about maybe like 10 years ago or so, maybe less than 10 years ago. Because like when you hear about these cases, you realize, unfortunately, bad things happen in our community, child abuse, people are bullied, and it has a long-term effect on people. And I remember once when I used to teach Maktab, we had a training session where there was this an individual that came in, and he kind of gave us a whole a breakdown of all the policies with regards to dealing with children. And one of the things that he mentioned was that psychological torment that children are exposed to is actually something which is probably worse than many physical types of abuse that children endure. And he said one of the reasons is because a lot of the children, when they actually go through psychological abuse, you can't see the scars of it. And you only see the scars later on in life when they're trying to form relationships as adults. They find it very difficult to how they connect with the person. And that this made me think to myself that how many times has it been that someone's actually seriously going through mental problems and they've come to us, and it's like we've kind of used the sabr card on them. Just do sabr, have patience. And it sounds very nice because it's a very Islamic term which seems to be, quoted in the Quran quite often, in hadith, and it's very sort of like, well, it's one of those badges that you kind of just put onto yourself, and then people assume that you're automatically pious. But a lot of people don't know what people are going through at home. You could put that face on social media, but what you're going through behind closed doors, and some people, I mean, I've spoken to some people and they've told me in private the kind of like abuse that they've experienced when they were young, or things like beaten in maktab, right, in madrasa, right? I mean, I went to madrasa, and unfortunately I went in the 90s. So if you were in the early 90s to maktab, yeah, you know what kind of tools, were used there, yeah. And I'm sure you guys have probably a very similar sort of like understanding. In them days, it was like, I think people didn't understand the consequences of harming vulnerable individuals of the community. Yeah, taking advantage of them. I don't know. I mean,
our teachers were given nicknames based on how they used to hit you.
Yeah, subhanallah. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you guys ever think about how it's a much deeper problem in our community, and the solutions are something which are not in the hands of one individual. It's like it's a system. It's a systematic problem that we have in our communities, right? Which I don't know. Maybe it's like inherited culture that we have that we're just passing on, and we're ignoring it. Because I remember, I'll tell you this here. I remember when I was in Pakistan. Yeah, when I was in Pakistan. Come on, say it, guys. So
Altaf came back at the right time.
Altaf, you unmute. Alhamdulillah, we couldn't hear all that.
All I heard is this one time I went to Pakistan and I thought, oh, I'm already back to the 3 days podcast.
Yeah. So I hope you guys like the flashing lights in the back here. I thought, maybe if you're in the whatever mood you're in, yeah, these lights are gonna help you guys. So yeah, I mean, as I was saying, it's when I was there was a guy I remember, yeah, and he said to me, "Oh, what do you do here? Why have you come to Pakistan to study for?" So I told him, because I was told that there's madrasa here, and there's a lot of sort of like well-known scholars, experts. So he goes to me, "Oh, you know what? The more you get beaten, the more those places in the fire of Jahannam are gonna be protected from your body." Yeah. And I was thinking, whoa, if that's the case, let me just count which areas are going to be protected. Yeah. And it was like, you see, this is what I was saying earlier on. It's like the kind of problem that we tend to have is that we kind of brush everything over with Islamic sort of cliches. And so we're not really kind of addressing the true issues. So like Mutahir was saying, that there's symptoms, but then there's deep-rooted problems which I'm sure, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, this is it's from like an Islamic point of view. When I'm answering people's questions, I have to try to get to the root of the problem to try and sort out issues. But it's like PTSD, anxiety, depression. Even I'm sure there's multiple things that are that are factors, contributing to all these problems. Yeah, but PTSD, I think, is a big issue which is clearly going to affect people's salat. If you're going to say to me that someone PTSD, if they just pray salat, Allah will resolve all their problems. It's like we're kind of like we're using salat in the wrong way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it comes down to understanding what mental health is. Like you mentioned, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And mental health is like any other medical condition. So if you got a cough or a cold, it's you're gonna take something for it, aren't you? Or if you got a broken leg, it's not just gonna get better magically by doing certain things. You're gonna have to seek help to get that fixed. Same way, mental health is the same thing, and I think that's what people just don't understand is that it is a serious problem.
Do you think, Dr. Saab, men find it harder to admit when they have a mental problem as opposed to women? Are there any statistics to prove?
Yeah, it's known that men generally don't go to seek just general medical advice anyway. Forget mental health advice. So they are.
And let me stop you there. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Yeah, because I have probably been to my doctor in the past 10 years twice. Yeah.
Once was in Pakistan. Carry on, Doc.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Is it the same doctor that gives you paracetamol for whatever illness you have?
No, this is the doctor. As soon as you walk in, he goes to me, "You again?" And you're thinking, how am I going to tell this guy that I've got
Write the paracetamol, get him out of it.
I'm telling you, man. Carry on. Sorry, Dr. Mutaher.
No, I've lost track now.
We're basically saying men just find it harder to admit when there's a problem.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So how I mean, is this because men are just generally supposed to or are expected to behave in a more sort of like man up kind of way?
Yeah, it's a cultural thing. So men are more a bit macho, aren't they? And to show that you've got some sort of people think mental health is like a weakness, and they don't want to open up and talk or discuss their personal issues. So you put yourself in a weak or vulnerable situation, and men don't like to be in that situation. A lot of people don't like to be in that situation, but men more so. So to talk about, I feel a bit low or mood or I feel a bit teary, that's not something you'd expect men culturally to do. So that's what probably keeps them away from seeking help.
So do you find that there are some communities out there where the men would easily kind of confide in you than others?
I think it's across all communities, but more so in the BME, BANE, whatever you want to call it. They have, because there's so many cultural differences. There's a lot of stigma associated with it, so it can vary between certain cultures.
Yeah, because I can imagine. I mean, like, for example, I'm from like a Pathan background, yeah, and I know in a Pathan background you have this because they're from like village mentality, tribal mentality. It's like when they talk about this kind of like how people become more civilized when they start living in cities, and after a while they start to become more aware of their own emotions. It's like from when I grew up, I saw how my father and my grandfather, my uncles, and others, relatives in abroad. I'm not gonna say Pakistan before Altaf quickly stops me there. But yeah, I see a lot of this kind of thing where it's like, you know what, you got to be strong, you got to be able to, like for instance, I'll give you an example. You'll see a lot of sort of Pathan people from villages in Pakistan going abroad to work in Saudi and UAE for months on end, right, without having chance to go back to their spouses at home. Now, this clearly is going to have an impact on the marriage, and it will have an impact, mentally it's going to have an impact. And in the time of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, what happened was when they started to make the armies more, they made the armies more sort of like formalized. The armies were paid by the government to go out to battle, and they would go out for long periods of time, depending on the expedition. So one day Umar radiallahu anh, he goes past a house, like at night time he would have a curfew, and then he would go around listening to the problems of the people. And he was listening to this one lady from a house, and she was singing some poetry, and he listened, and basically the poetry was saying that I miss my husband. He's gone for war, so I miss my husband. And if it wasn't for the fear of Allah, you know, I would have been in someone else's bed. So it was like this. This is like some of the early sort of examples of mental stress on a marriage because of overworking or because of, you know, a family member being far away from their spouse. And Umar radiallahu anh, he went home and he told he asked his daughter, he said to his daughter, he goes, if your husband left, you know, home for a long period of time, what's the longest you think you can stay without him? And she said 4 months. He goes, fine. So he passed a law. He said the longest a man can stay away from home is 4 months. He has to come back. So it's interesting how the early Sahaba, they identified like you know, mental stress and stress on the families as being something that was problematic for the community. So they quickly tried to resolve it as much as possible. I mean, Altaf, what's your thoughts on this?
You're on mute.
Excellent thoughts, Altaf.
Silence is the best answer to everything, bro.
I think Musab, when it comes to that, I think that particular example is really exceptional, because, you know, in the society that we live in, there's like always that you know, it's always centered on a man's need, whereas, you know, Islam and Umar radiallahu anh back at that point was also thinking about a woman's urge and a woman's need as well, which was kind of like quite exceptional and quite different. And because if you compare that to nowadays, it's always about, you know, the men's need, and even culturally that sits there. But in terms of like what you're saying about the topic and about having that macho and that bravado, I think that does exist. The question is, Doc, like that exists with the older section of the community. What about the younger section of the community, the millennials, the TikTok generation, where you like, you know, where somebody doesn't like their post, you know, and it does cause mental, you know, it's a joke.
Yeah.
It might sound funny, but actually there's reports that suggest that they suffer from higher levels of stress.
Absolutely, yeah, they do. I mean, if you look now, more and more young people are suffering from mental health problems. So it's becoming much more common, especially at a younger age. And I think over the COVID period, there was some data or an article that came out, I think it was in The Guardian actually, that was saying that there's been an increase in young children seeking mental health services, a massive surge, especially in the BME community.
Well, why is this is it like the first time they've come up with this acronym that is trying to use it everywhere?
It's got so many acronyms. Is it BAME or?
It's Black, Asian, Minority, Ethnic. So
No, like, it's come out.
a relatively new one.
It hasn't been used like in the past before. Like, why is it coming out now? Is it like the studies have just been done now?
No.
Is it?
So Asians used to get, so in the UK and America, when it comes to like the acronym BAME, what used to be in the UK like about 15 years ago was BME. So they used to always say Black and Minority Ethnic, right? And then I think, like, even when I was at work at the city council, they said to me, Altaf, join the Black Managers Network. And I was like, buying black? Like, so why would I join the Black Managers Network? And they were like, no. Politically in the UK, you're classified as black, or you were classified as black. So you would always kind of like go in those kind of arenas. And it used to be called BME for a long time. And I think kind of like they understood that the growth in the number of Asian people within the community and the fact that it wasn't representative, and they added the Asian in as well. But now people are complaining and saying, well, black is just a color. It doesn't denote a group of people. You could be from, you know, the Afro-Caribbean countries, or you could be from Africa. You know, that's just a color. Same with Asian. It doesn't really mean anything. It spans the biggest continent in the world. So what people are saying is that don't classify us as BAME people. Look at us as individuals from whatever kind of background we're from, because these are just massive groups. It's just like saying white people, like that doesn't mean anything. That covers like half the world. You know what I mean? So it's one of those kind of politically sensitive things at the moment, especially with Black Lives Matter and everything like that taking place.
So what would the, you know, like, okay, so sorry, what I was asking, why is this issue now becoming more? There's more exposure of this term now on the media than like 10 years ago. Is it because there's new studies regarding it? Is it something's happened in the community? Is it like I can understand with things like Muslims being in the media, in a negative light, right? What's the
It's a level. It's a level of analysis, Mufti Sab. That's all it is. It's like how
Yeah.
you analyze a group of people.
Yeah, that's I was going to say that we know this using the terms BME or BAME. I mean, they come from from a medical perspective. We do a lot of reading of studies and articles, and we have to like classify people or groups to identify certain communities who are at risk of certain problems. So
Diabetes, for example.
Yeah, for example, diabetes more so in the Asian community, and then even then that is broken down further into Bangladesh community being the worst, etc.
why is that? Why is the Bangladesh community more at risk? Is it the diet?
It could be because of the diet. I mean, no one really knows. They just know the facts that this is it. It could be a genetic predisposition. It could be the lifestyle, the culture, slightly different. But from the Southeast Asian communities, Bangladesh is the worst.
Doc, I've got a question for you.
Go on.
Is it hereditary, or can it be inherited from your parents' mental health issues?
Yeah, so there's lots of risk factors for mental health. So it's like we can say it's multifactorial. I mean, if you go through the risk factors, you could say that racism and discrimination. So that can cause stress, and that can be a risk factor for mental health problems. You've got socioeconomic issues. So it could be like work, finance, family life, education, poverty, and then you've got your the biological stuff. So genetics, is there family history? So if you've got a family history of mental health problems, you're more at risk. So all these things together are like the risk factors. So you just weigh it up. So when Ustad was asking about how do you know if someone has a mental health problem or some other problem, these are the questions you probably ask. They probably ask about their family. They probably ask, have they, is there anyone else that suffers from this in the family, or what type? You ask about their work, job, is there any of the stresses, how their finances, stuff like that. So it's very personal questions you need to ask, and then you'll be able to analyze that information and just interpret it really.
I've got another question. Sorry, links into Altaf's question. Sorry, Altaf. Basically, you said that there's a rise in mental health issues with youngsters now. That we know of. Is this just with the youngsters, or in general from when you first started practicing, medicine, etc., and where you are now? Is there a rise in adults as well, or is it just because we identify it more often? And first we just used to neglect some of these issues and didn't recognize them. Is that one of the factors?
It could be a number of reasons. It could be, I mean, I've personally experienced, my experience is that I've seen more younger people suffering from mental health problems. Secondly, it could be now people are more open, and the younger people, like you said, the millennials and etc., are more open about their feelings. It could be that, or it could be the fact that certain individuals, like at a certain time, may have, like celebrities, may have gone on the bandwagon of trying to promote mental health. And that sort of caused a surge of people to come forward.
Doc, is it because it's more socially acceptable? Like to have mental health issues now is more socially acceptable compared to before, when people would like just call the Rocky and then you'd have like 4 different people reading different things on you in the hope that they could solve something.
It's funny you said that, actually. There was a trend. I did notice a trend. I think there was some sort of pop star. This was about maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. There was a pop star that had I think it was bipolar disorder or something. And then suddenly there was a sudden rise of young women coming in saying they've got, bipolar disorder. It wasn't depression anymore. It was like bipolar disorder. And then there was a change. I think it was like PTSD. Another celebrity had like PTSD or something, or personality disorder. personality disorder. And then that became quite common.
That's fine. I'm laughing at the fact that Nav is pointing and saying his wife is right there.
He looked like he was pointing at me.
No. He's pointing at. He's saying his wife. I just didn't want to say. I was laughing while Doc was talking about PTSD. Do you know what I mean? It's not good.
Okay. So I have a question. So they say about a lot of people have said to me they don't want to go to the doctors because the doctors are simply going to prescribe them some sort of prescription medicine, which is only gonna what are they called? They kind of
was the one that
Antidepressants.
Antidepressants, yeah. Yeah, that simply put a person to sleep. Right? I mean, I've got a few people I know, and they say to me that basically the medicine the doctors give us, it just puts us to sleep for about 10 hours a day. And the doctors don't really know exactly how to deal with the issue. This is what they said to me, right? And they don't want to take that.
So there's a lot of stereotypes out there. I mean, it doesn't help with like media and movies, especially highlighting certain mental health conditions, and then the poor treatment that some people have, and it just gets spread like wildfire, especially in our communities. And these experiences are what people hold, the perceptions. They're going to go to the doctor, he's going to give them this medication, and like you said, that these are some of the myths that they have. A lot of people that have mental health problems don't get treated with medication. So that's one thing I need to get clear. And then there are different types of medications. The symptom for some of the mental health problems is that they feel sleepy, that they feel tired. So it could be whether it's from their own symptoms from the mental health problem, or yeah, you're right, it could be a side effect of the medication. But I think you just got to take a pinch of salt with whatever you hear.
Yeah, I mean, because I hear this quite a lot. When for example, when people say to me, this is a very common thing that people straight away they sort of like blame it on the jinn, right? It's a very common thing that anyone feels slight strange sort of sensations in their life, a few doors opening here and there, a few taps going on and off there, or maybe they're not getting a job.
Taps. Taps is a big one. Like doors creaking is all right, but taps coming on and off. Come on, man. You gotta actually switch the tap on.
Depends what kind of tap you got in it. Nowadays you get all sorts of taps. So the point is that I tend to find a lot of people are quickly resorting to like a supernatural sort of response to something they're going through. Maybe it's because they're resorting to that because they don't want to kind of see the doctor. They don't want to be classified under some sort of a mental term, right? Maybe it's that. Maybe it's the family stigma, right? They want to kind of like use that as a last resort. Otherwise, what are the people going to say? What's the family going to say? And I don't know. I mean, from your experience, do you get patients who will tell you, "Oh, Dr. Saab, I think it's magic. Someone back home's done magic on me," or it's always someone back home, isn't it, that does the magic? It's like no one in England.
I won't name any areas, but they say, someone from that area has done black magic on me. But
is it all the same area?
When I worked in like Allen Rocks, there was like a certain area. No, but yeah, I've seen a few cases where they've suspected some other external forces causing the problems. But what it is that they usually come to
you make it sound like Star Wars. Like other external forces. May the force be with you, son.
Yoda and.
I got a question, Doc. Right. So, you're in a doctor's surgery, right? Nobody's mentioned the possession thing, right? And as a believer as well, at the same time, and you believe that the unseen exists, right? And there's a whole spectrum of there's a whole spectrum of beliefs when it comes to jinn and possession and so on and so forth, right? Is there any time where you sit down and you say, you know what, clinically, I ain't got a clue, right? Just go find your local priest, because I know there is something about you can, when all is lost, send them to the local imam.
I don't think I've been in a situation when I think all is lost, because remember there are people more experienced than me, so I could refer them to a specialist. So maybe the specialist could answer that question probably better. But I mean, it's really hard. The people that come and see me, going back to the start question, was you get a few cases where they've already sought the Raqi, or they've gone down that route and it's not helped, and so they come to me. If that makes sense. So it's like a last resort, or it's probably going hand in hand. But it's sad to see that lots of people spend like thousands of pounds on these people, and they're not any better. And then again, you hear these horror stories.
Doc, sorry to interrupt you. I heard somebody saying, not even heard somebody. I heard somebody paid someone over £10,000 because part of the medication was a rare form of crocodile bone that could only be sourced from a particular part of, I think it was Bangladesh or India, apparently.
Had to
And then
ban
that
this.
had to be mixed with something else from here, and it cost the person 10 grand. And I
Whoa.
spoke to this guy, and I was
Have
like,
you,
bro, this guy's
Nav, you sure that
actually,
was a Macbeth?
yeah, and the guy's, he's an educated guy and everything. But then I said, like, why did you believe it, bro? Like, it's not like you're into all of this hocus pocus, but then you hear about the desperate situation about certain people, and
Yeah.
desperation can really blind someone into, like, they won't think logically anymore.
Mm.
And you
Yeah,
see,
actually, so mental health, there's certain mental health, you know, depending how severe it is, they become very vulnerable and they become very, you know, they become targets for certain individuals who just gonna make pounds out of them. So yeah, it's quite sad.
So okay, let me ask you this. It's a bit straight into your face here. So do you think a lot of the cases where people claim that they are treating people are just scam?
I don't know. I really don't know. I can't answer that. I don't.
Like if okay, so what I'm
Doc,
saying is like
Doc,
if someone
if
if
you
you
have
saw the
friends any longer,
symptoms,
you're gonna get hurt.
if you
I'm
saw the
alright
symptoms
eventually.
in someone, what I'm saying is if
Yeah.
you saw the symptoms in someone and you really were inclined to really strongly, you felt inside, you know what, this person has mental issues, right? But there's other individuals saying, no, this guy's got some magic on him or some sort of like something done, some jinn or something. I mean, okay, you know, we believe in jinn. We believe most of the scholars are on the opinion that sihr, magic, it can have an effect on human beings,
Yeah.
mental effects as well. But what I'm saying is from your own sort of like experience when you've seen people who are clearly going through some sort of because I personally I have seen like certain individuals who even though I'm not an expert, I can clearly see that there is some mental issue going on here. There's like a mental issue. It's not a jinn or anything. It's just like a mental issue.
Yeah.
But it's for me, I can't determine. Like, I don't have the expertise to be able to say that this person is suffering more from some sort of like supernatural problem, whereas it might simply just be a matter of imbalance in something in their mind.
So if I ask you a question, Ustad, what do you advise them then? Do you tell them to go to the GP or do you?
Yeah. I 100%. Everyone knows, my subscribers know. Whenever people ask me about these depression, anxiety, OCD, even the first thing I tell them is just go to the doctor. I say, go to the. That's your first port of resort. That's your first port of call. You go to them. You get it sorted out. If they say to you they've tried everything and they can't tell, then as a last resort you go to. I mean, the reason I say that is because we don't seem to have this culture from the time of the Prophet ﷺ that they automatically kind of blamed everything on something supernatural. Like we don't have that. You don't find narrations of there being people who say, you know what's wrong with you, or you know what, I got some jinn on me or something. You don't get that. So it's like it has happened somewhere in history. This has caught on, and for many people, I for one know like incidents in my own relatives where some guy or some lady, you know, has kind of blamed something on magic, and everyone's felt sorry for them. And it wasn't magic or anything. It was just they've done something really bad in the community, and instead of getting exposed for it, it's the easy option is just to say, you know what, it's some jinns took over me. Yeah,
I think the same might apply for mental health.
I ate the last Rolo.
I think the same might apply for mental health. It might be safer in certain communities to say that, oh, it's a jinn possession or some jinn related thing than admitting to a mental health problem. I don't know. Maybe that's a reason.
sorry to go a little off topic. Do sometimes people, like generally, they think it's the Islamic thing to do is to seek, well, some sort of like guidance or some sort of cure from Quranic sources, like he's got a headache, he's got like a pack of Anadin there, ibuprofen there, he's got paracetamol there, but no, I want to blow on my hand, read Fatiha, and a rub on my head. Like, do you get a lot of cases where people do this and like?
Is there a question for
Is it
Doctor?
justifiable?
Is it for Ustad or?
That one I'm just throwing out there.
Yeah, so Doctor, you can start first.
Well, I don't know if they've done that first, but I wouldn't stop them from doing it. I'd say yeah, take paracetamol as well. It might help to do both. There's no harm.
Well, some people are adamant on. They think that by going to the medication, you've some sort of like distrusted in what, like what
You're going
hadith-
against tawakkul,
Okay.
basically.
So yeah, I can see your point now. So so this is basically we call it health belief. So this is where you might feel that by seeking medical services or whatever is sort of weakening your deen, or is a weakness in your religion or your culture or something like that. So that is common. So it just comes down to educating them. By taking paracetamol, you're not affecting your religion.
So are you saying in The Exorcist, if she had gone to a doctor,
if she had gone to
the
a
house
doctor,
wouldn't have got burned down?
that vomit could have been like gastroenteritis or something.
What was that pink medicine that stops you from vomiting? What's it called?
Gaviscon.
The pist. I can't remember. The pistamol or something. I can't remember the name.
There's quite a few. Better histine, I don't know.
Something like that. She should have just had some of that and said, so yeah. Wake
Yeah,
up
I
your
mean,
tooth.
I personally, I think, a lot of, if we, I don't know, maybe someone's done a study on this or something, but if you look at it from an Islamic point of view, the Prophet ﷺ, he really understood people's problems. Like, he really understood health problems and mental problems, and he didn't used to always give them like medical advice of what to take, right? He would leave that to doctors. He had doctors there in the time, and he would tell people, right, go to this guy for the treatment. And sometimes he would mention some sort of like a medical treatment, like hijama, or eating the black seed oil. Yeah, and this was, remember when we done that podcast before, when we were talking about the medicines and people kind of like, where do you draw the line between the sunnah prophetic medicine and between standard sort of like modern understanding of medicine. And it's like everyone seems to think honey and black seed oil cures everything, right? And that's maybe because they're reading into the hadith in a very literal way. And so now it kind of like what Dr. Saab was saying, I think it's that issue where your health, your faith, are you compromising your faith by not believing that this can cure me? Yeah, is it like one of those situations where, if I don't resort to black seed oil and if I go to the doctor straight away, am I really kind of like letting Allah down? And I think that itself needs to be addressed in the community as well. People need to understand where we draw the line and where we understand how the Prophet ﷺ would deal with these kind of issues. So there were clearly, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were people who clearly had mental issues. Yeah, there's a narration of Abu Dawood where there was a lady in the community. She had mental issues, and she would come to the Prophet ﷺ, hold him by his hand, and he would just walk with her. And she had mental issues. Clearly, she's not going to really kind of have some sort of a rational reason for why she wants the Prophet ﷺ to follow her. But the Prophet ﷺ would just walk with her, and then, he would come back. So sometimes I think when we kind of look into the Sunnah, our looking into the Sunnah is a very sort of literal way of looking into the Sunnah without understanding the greater picture of how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with different people. There was an incident where there was a young boy in Medina, and he had a little bird, and he used to tie this string onto the leg, and the bird died one day, and the Prophet ﷺ found out. So the Prophet ﷺ went to his house. He was a little kid, and he said to the little boy, he says, Ya Aba Umair, ma fa'ala al-Nughayr. How's that bird? He knew the bird died. So it was like how the Prophet ﷺ, sometimes you just have to listen to someone. And I think it's like the time that we're living in, it's like we want solutions, like we want a physical solution, a physical tablet or something, or we want like a medicine, or we want like a ruqya done, or we want some scholar to make a dua for us. Yeah, and yes, definitely, without a doubt, having faith in the du'as is something clearly that we have to have. But at the same time, there's also the idea of, solving the problem through the correct channels. And the Prophet ﷺ sometimes just listen to someone. Someone could have a problem. I've seen this personally, I've seen this many times, where a guy would come to me, and this guy, you'd never see him cry. But in front of me, he breaks down, cries and cries and cries, and tells me the problem he's got. And you can tell all he wanted to do was just to cry to someone. And it's like, I'm a very kind of cold-hearted guy, yeah. I'm a very cold-hearted guy. Like, how do I react in this situation? I'm not trained for this. Like, do I like tap him on the back? Do I come and hug him quickly? Do I like just sit there, put my head down? Like, what do you do in that situation? Do I kind of like, do I kind of respond to his emotions and start crying as well? I mean, I don't know what to do. And I've seen some situations where the guy will just be there. He'll just like break down, doesn't know what to do. And I'm thinking, Allah, what do I do in this situation? Do I like just say to him, brother, it's okay, don't worry. Allah's going to make things... I say, Allah's going to make things easy. Will that be the right thing to say? Or do I say, I can't imagine what you're going through? Like, how do you deal with this kind of...
I don't think anything's wrong in saying that, Allah's going to make this easy, because everything is in the hands of Allah. But
no, the reason I'm saying that is because I've actually experienced this. I've said to someone, Allah's going to make things easy, and they've responded in a very harsh way.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it's an individual thing, really. Most people, they probably just want to talk, like you said, get it off their chest. And one of the treatments for mental health is talking therapies. So there's different types of talking therapies. There's like your standard counseling that you've probably have this perception of. There's other things like cognitive behavioral therapy. There's lots of types of talking therapies, and sometimes it goes hand in hand with medicines. Medicines just may just fix some of the symptoms that they're experiencing, but the talking therapies are the actual, the root, gets to the root of the problem, or helps to challenge some of the problems that they have. Because remember, mental health is to do with their thinking, their emotions. So if you can help them to think better, this is what CBT does, the cognitive behavioral therapy, helps to challenge the way they're thinking, so they don't feel or think so negatively, rather they're thinking a bit more positively. It's interesting that you said...
Is that, Doc, like the thing that happens in the film The Joker, where like the guy's on medication, but he's also speaking through his problems, and the person who's listening to him is supposed to be helping him, but like obviously kind of like that goes a bit pear-shaped. But because these are the kind of places where people see these kind of therapies, like actively can engage with them in terms of what you're watching on, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember that scene from The Joker, but yeah, the thing is, you can access talking therapies quite a few ways. So you can do it over the phone. So some people have a mental health problem, they can't get out of their house, or they've got a problem with social anxiety where they can't be in the company of other people. So it's all tailored to what they need. So there's lots of ways to access help. So you can do it over the phone, you can do it over the internet. If you want face-to-face, that's available. So whatever is required or needed for that patient, really. But it does help. I mean, for anxiety, I say 80% of anxiety can be managed just through like talking therapies. So it's interesting.
What's it like, Doc? Because like Altaf said, our only exposure to something like, the psychiatrist or psychologist, I don't know what the correct term is, it's just like a big leather chair and there's someone sitting there with a notepad. Oh, tell me, Bismillah.
No, it can be group therapy. It can be, like I said, over a chat online or over the phone. So you don't have to physically see them. But it's not like how you probably see it on TV.
So it's group therapy. How does the group therapy really work? How does it help a person overcome their problems?
So it depends on the situation. So it might be that someone who has this mental health problem, they probably feel all alone, like they're the only person that has these symptoms or feelings. So hearing other problems, other people experience their problems might, make them feel a bit more normal. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're normalizing it. The other thing it might be, you listen to someone else. How did they deal with their problem? So it might be the same problem you have, but the way they dealt with it, you might pick up an idea, think, oh, I could learn from that as well. I could try that. So it just helps build it. And the other thing you guys mentioned was about religion. Sometimes it can be a factor that helps reduce you having a mental health problem. So having faith, whether it's in Allah or something else, then it might be a means to, treat your mental health problem, because you have this reliance on something. Whereas other people may not. So like an atheist may not think this is it. Whereas they can probably they can concentrate, they can focus on something else. There's like a meaning to life, where some people may have no meaning to life. I don't know. But there are some studies to show that religion can be a helpful thing.
Okay.
What about placebos?
Sorry?
What about placebos in general?
So placebo has to be compared to something else. So if you're So this is how antidepressants work. So if you give antidepressants to a group of people and placebo to another group of people, and they both have mental health issues, um, the antidepressants obviously outweigh have better effects than the placebo group. But yeah, I mean, placebo in general has shown to actually slightly improve.
And that's why I asked. I was reading some paper about it, and sometimes I can't remember it was. Some sort of mental health issue, but they were literally giving them nothing other than sugar, and because they thought that they were getting the aid that the medical kind of assistance that they needed, that made them actually feel better. Just believe something.
Yeah, so that's probably going to be in like a mild sort of stage of the problem. If they're in like a moderate or severe stage, you don't want to mess about by giving them a placebo. But I mean, 1 in 4 people, there's a stat that 1 in 4 people every year experiences some form of mental health problem. That's a lot. So there's 4 of us
but then,
here.
I mean, the question to that would be, again, what is mental health? As in, what constitutes mental health? Then is it so broad that like I was speaking to someone regarding some people have autism, and he was saying basically there's theories out there that say everyone's got a level of autism. There's a spectrum. It's just where you fall in that spectrum, and it could differ in the time of your life, depending on the time of year, what you're going through. You're saying there's some people out there who say that. So it's like, I mean, I think what you were saying early on, that's an interesting point where celebrity comes out with something new, right? A disorder. And then all of a sudden you see this trend of people out there, kind of like superimposing that onto themselves and self-diagnosing themselves as being suffering from problems. And now maybe they might be suffering from another problem, but they're, misdiagnosing themselves with another problem.
Yeah. That could be true. I think just the way society is, people like to imitate and copy others. That could be one factor. Or it could be, like you said, they have another underlying mental health problem. Maybe they're just a hypochondriac and they think, okay, this person's got this condition, I must have it as well. So there could be lots of factors.
I think Googling symptoms probably gives people like really anxiety anyway.
I'll tell you something where I sometimes I feel anxious. Sometimes I feel anxious when sometimes I'll get like questions. Yeah, I'll get sometimes in the day or something, and I'm thinking, what's the answer to this question? I'll get stressed. So even before, sometimes I'll open the message, I might think to myself, why should I open it? So what I've done to solve that is, I don't open the messages. If it's someone that like it's not like directly connected to something important in the day, like my work or something, I won't check the message. I'll delay the message. I'll like have a time in the day where I'm feeling a bit calm, and then I check the messages. So
what you replied to me today?
Sorry?
Like how you replied to me today, just after like 8 hours later. I'm only joking.
No, I do that with everyone, bro. You're not special.
Hello, guys. Over and out.
Nah, no joke. So I mean, the point I'm making is, this is how I have found I can overcome these kind of things. Like, for example, like if I've gone through, let's say, for example, in the day, if I've gone through a few stressful things, I drive my car and maybe I've braked all of a sudden, right? That's kind of like that kind of stress. That sometimes I find if I don't calm down and I do something else which aggravates that stress, it kind of prolongs it. And then this might have, that might have an effect on some other things in my day. Maybe working, maybe, I don't know, at home. Maybe even answering people's questions. I might just be a bit abrupt in how I answer the question. And so I try to analyze myself. And I think this actually is very interesting because this overlaps into, self-monitoring. Yeah, when you're trying to self-monitor yourself, you're trying to assess yourself. You can say tasawwuf as well, a level of tasawwuf, where you're actually looking at yourself, your sins. Because if you think about it, committing the sin and having the guilt as well is also something which is like something mental, isn't it? And then, being able to, ask Allah forgiveness, doing tawbah, and praying 2 rakats, doing wudu even forgives your sins. It's like a lot of this overlaps with mental states as well. You know, a person prays their salat, you feel calm inside, your body feels cool, right? You get up for Fajr, you felt so good that day that you achieved something. Achieving goals in the day, being able to pray your 5 times salat on time. And a lot of these things, I think, are very closely connected with how our like early generations dealt with, these kind of. So maybe there's different ways in how people can deal with mental issues. Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, lifestyle is very important. Like I was going back to that scenario where, let's say if you're getting stressed at work, maybe you need to take a time off work. Maybe it could be doing something to help de-stress. So it could be like going for a run. So doing some exercise. It could be maybe, having a pet or something like that. So having something to help you de-stress will,
That's an
will
interesting one, having a pet, in fact.
Yeah,
some of the scholars have even mentioned this in the books in the past. Like when it comes to the issue of keeping a dog, prohibition of keeping a dog or other sort of like animals. And they've said, if the dog is there for a purpose, like, protection, or even if it's for removing loneliness as well, a person feels lonely. And then by taking care of the dog, it's like they feel some sort of like purpose in their day. The day becomes purposeful. And it gives them some confidence as well.
Yeah, I mean, loneliness is a big problem nowadays. And to be honest, I do actually tell or encourage patients to either get a pet, or maybe if they don't want a pet, if it's too much, then walk their neighbor's pet, their dog or something. So it just gets them out, gets them to do exercise and stuff. Because there's another aspect to it, because when you do exercise, it also helps release certain hormones and chemicals which make you feel a bit better. Just like eating certain foods too as well.
That's what, the foods one, Doc. One of the things that kind of like came up quite a bit was, and I was on this like mental well-being course at university when I kind of like went in for like a special lecture, and the lady was just talking about managing your energy and stress levels throughout the day through what you drink, and she was just saying like having more stressful moments, rather than having tea or coffee, having something more herbally, like having a herbal tea or having honey and water or whatever you're gonna choose, but something that will, not maybe honey and water, but something that will reduce your sugar level or your caffeine level, so you're less stressed. And they were just saying that in the office environment, they were saying that worked quite well, that when people were going to a stressful moment, rather than kind of getting really agitated and up for it, they would just drink something really mellow, like a chamomile tea or something like that, and that would really drop their energy level down. And help them cope a little bit better.
Yeah, that's true. It could work.
This. I mean, I think this is a very interesting. Someone's on Facebook has said painting as well, and I totally understand that. When I draw and I do my drawing, I feel so relaxed. Like I don't even realize what's happening around me. Like some people watch movies and they kind of like go into this trance, and they don't understand what's happening around them. I can do drawing and painting, and sometimes I can be there for hours. And it just feels so relaxed, and I just start thinking about the picture, and I think about the different like shapes and the different colors and shades.
You can get these books which you just color in.
They're called coloring books. Yeah, we know.
Color by numbers.
Okay, so what do these so what happens here then in these kind of activities that people do?
So this is diverting your focus or your concentration to something else. So if you're getting stressed out by something, let's say you're saying the questions are too much, or maybe the drive was just too stressful today, then you need to try and change the way of thinking, because otherwise your mind is just going to focus on that. So you need to focus on something else. So generally coloring, especially those books I'm talking about, I think it's with M, I forgot, it's on the tip of my tongue now. Someone Google it if you can, please. But if you color these
guys, so guys, if you guys know what they're called, put it in. Yeah.
And because it's so detailed, these pictures, when you color them in, it just you're focused on that, and it slowly keeps you focused and concentrate on that. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. So yeah, I recommend getting a book. And even these courses which I'm talking about with cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
I have to have a mental health problem to do it. People with epilepsy do cognitive behavioral therapy, and I find that's helpful. People who just want to be positive thinkers. It really does help help you to understand yourself, the way you think.
Interesting.
The concept behind cognitive behavioral therapy is that the concept is thoughts and feelings and sensations are connected. So if you can control your thoughts, then you can control your feelings, and that way you can control your sensations, and vice versa, and the way around. So
Okay.
doing
I
activities
don't.
like that.
Do you guys kind of like do anything to kind of de-stress yourself, or?
It could be just playing football, could be going for a cycle, it could be punching something, squeezing, those
Punching,
squeezing
I mean,
balls, those
punching
stress
something,
balls.
I know that works. Trust me.
Feels good.
When I used to do MMA, I used to, trust me, when I was stressed, if I just start punching the other guy or the bag, yeah, I just afterwards I just feel so relaxed and so calm.
Oh,
Okay,
it's
one
just
thing I find is like like massage or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a one of my students, and every time I finish lesson, when I'm teaching him, he'll come and he's like, I don't know, he knows all the places to press, right? Cam, if you're watching, yeah, Cam watching, yeah. Cam, if you're watching, Cam is good at it as well.
He's watching.
Yeah, Cam, he knows the places, man. He just presses those. So because I do a lot of badminton, I get like a lot of tight, like knots in my muscles. And when you kind of like just have this kind of right massage in the right places, you just feel so calm and relaxed, de-stressed. I think these kind of measures, rather than quickly just resorting people to go to, a Raqi or trying to find the right Taweez, yeah, I think this is the practical way to kind of like try to solve your problems, at least as best as you can do. And if it's not going to work, then you resort to something else.
guys, for anyone interested, on the Facebook link, Umar Malik's actually posted some good statistics. I think I think he works for an organization that focus on BAME communities in general,
Yeah,
and he's
send it to me. I'll put it on the Facebook, on the YouTube.
Umar Malik's got some nice facts and
You
figures.
know, when I open the Facebook, it just shows me about 5 messages. Why is that?
You need to go onto the actual Muslims of Birmingham page. And
Yeah,
that's
I'm
what
on
he's-
there.
You have to
I'm
click
about
into that.
30.
You have to click onto that post.
Yeah, I have, but I can only see like 5.
If you click to expand it on your
Oh,
computer,
right.
it comes
Oh.
up.
Walaikum salam to the not last week's guest, last week's guest, Atikur Rahman. He said salam. Jazakallah to Umar for all the input. Cam, me cousin. What can I say? You me cousin.
So if you have to click into the actual thing with stuff, and then you get all the
Yeah, I
comments.
have, but let me try again.
Doc,
I
I got a
see.
question for you, Ennett.
Go
So,
on.
like, have you ever said to anybody? I know you can't. You may not be able to answer this. So, if you can't, don't worry about it. Have you ever recommended somebody like, you know what, we're past it with you, bro. You might need to go to Iraqi. Or is it like any cases that come up and you think, you know what, I think you're not going to get served well here.
Keep your job, bro. Don't answer this question. Leave it. Don't worry.
No, because I think Dr. Asim, who's a psychologist, Talib
Yeah.
al-Habib, right,
Yeah.
or AKA, he speaks about something like this as well. And we spoke, I think Mufti Saab was mentioning it about last time when we were on radio and we were discussing this topic.
Dr. Asim's a nice guy.
Yeah,
mashallah.
I've actually heard him say that, where he mentioned about this. I don't know the name that he gives it. It's like sometimes he says when you're dealing with patients, there's like a certain number of cases where you can't resolve the problem, and the only way to resolve it is you have to tell them to go to their exorcist or their Raqi, and it gets sorted. So they
Because
can't
the
explain
problem
it.
in their mind, and the only way to solve it is through that issue.
Yeah.
Or there's something
genuine.
genuine, or there's something genuinely there. Like, are you like saying that you don't believe in anything genuinely there, Nav?
I don't know, man. I've always been on the fence with this subject, but this is a topic for a different different day.
No. You might as well set your position up now. Innit? Mr. Rationalist. You want to go super rationalist and now you want to hide?
Other than the fact that there's no proper dalil for, let's not get into all of that.
Now it's going to be heresy. They're going to clip this part out and that's it.
Oh, he follows Sheikh Akram Nadwi's opinion. Acha. Yeah, boy.
You know, this
let's-
issue, I mean, I think this would be a very good thing to do. Maybe in the future, we can have a podcast where we can bring someone who's experienced in doing ruqya, and maybe we can discuss it with them.
Him against Sheikh Akram Nadwi.
A lot of this kind of thing, I think, a lot of this kind of thing is conflated. Like, there clearly is this concept of jinn, and we know that jinn have influence on human beings. But to what degree do they have influence on human beings? That's a debated issue. And then there are clearly cases out there where people are blaming it on, some supernatural sort of occurrence, and in reality, it can easily be diagnosed as a well-known. And there might be, some mental cases which are what we recognize as being some sort of a supernatural issue. But by taking certain medicines, it kind of reduces the symptoms of it. Yeah, I don't think this has been an issue that's been thoroughly sort of fleshed out.
I genuinely think that it's what I said, Doc, where somebody has got that, they put themselves in a position that they mentally think that the only way that I can get cured is by going to this person. So even if that person was to read anything, read the book upside down and read it, he'd think automatically, I've done what I needed to do to get better, and now I'm going to get better.
I think it kills two birds with one stone by saying that, like, because I'm not a psychiatrist, so I think Talib al-Habib is in that field where he sees those extreme cases. So if he's done what he could, and then he suggests that maybe I could kill two birds with one stone, because if it is something, a possession, then they're going to go seek help for that. And if it is something that is just their health belief, that if they get this sort of medication, they're going to get better, it's kill two birds with one stone.
That's true. By the way, guys, before I do get refuted and all the negative comments start, I said I'm on the fence on this one, so I'm not too sure.
No, you didn't. Stop pretending. What was I going to say?
Do you believe that? Go on, Altaf. You put me on the spot. I'll ask you: do you believe in jinn possession and somebody loses their free will and acts a particular way?
I don't know about. I think I'm not sure about like possession and stuff like that. I think the level of influence that Mufti Saab was talking about is, there's certain instances where you come across things where it's very difficult to tell whether it's a mental health episode if you're not like a clinical specialist, right? And something's going on because somebody's deviated off the norm, right, or their normal patterns of behavior so much and so drastically for a short period of time.
Language that no one's spoken for 2,000 years or something, and then you're like, okay.
Yeah, but sometimes that gets found out as well. And when you ask them a question and somebody knows that language from 1,000 years ago, and they can ask the question, it's like, I don't really know the answer to that one. So I think it's kind of like a mixture of both when it comes to that. Doc, somebody's asked on YouTube, which is a good question, right? Because we were talking about stress being a mental health, and a mental health illness, and somebody was just asking, how is stress mental health illness?
So we get stressed out by loads of things, from everyday life stuff. When you have a mental health problem, it's to do with the way you think, and I said this: think and you feel, and the way you act or behave, and this impacts how we handle stress. It impacts how we, have relationships with others or relate to others. It affects our decisions and choices. When you have such a really high amount of stress coming, then you can't seem to function. You just get overloaded. So if it's persistent and it's affecting your mood, your character, your relationship with people, you're getting angry and stuff like that, then you can visually see that. You can see that happening. You can feel it happening. And if it persists for a long period, then it's a problem. It will lead to some form of mental health problem.
So stress is not a mental health problem. It's not diagnosed as a mental health problem.
There's different types. So if there's long-term stress, then it will lead to like depression or anxiety, etc. It's a risk factor.
Okay. Isn't it something to do with like, because I normally hear that it's about like the chemical reaction that's going on in the mind and the kind of different things that are being released as a result of the way that you're acting or behaving, and that's why kind of like sometimes they kind of like say that stress is related to certain forms of cancer or as like one of the means.
Possibly. I mean, there could be something called a stress reaction. So your adrenaline goes up, your heart starts racing, things like that. So that could be just like an acute phase of a stress reaction. But if it's persistently carrying on, so you're stressed out all the time, maybe because it's from your work or someone's bullying you or something that is going on, it's just going to mentally affect you. Yeah. So if someone's getting stressed out by
By tangled wires.
yeah, and if it's happening on a day-to-day basis, it's going to get you down. No matter what, it's going to get you down, and it's going to affect you. It's going to affect the way you start seeing things. It's going to start affecting the way you behave. You might just not want to do anything anymore. You might not want to do those things. You might not look forward to coming on, on these shows. It will start changing the way. So
Hint, 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 hint. Yeah. Don't worry, we're gonna call you again. Don't worry.
but yeah,
Dr. Saab, can I ask you, is laughter a form of medicine for mental health? Or is it just a saying that people love to use? Does laughing a lot or being, happy?
Is it Patch Adams? Is it Patch Adams, that movie where the doctor was making people laugh?
Yeah, I think, it was a Patch Adams, yeah.
I talked about Joker, right, and you didn't get that reference, and then you come out with some Patch Adams guy that nobody even knows what
Who
movie
the
it's
hell is
from.
Patch Adams? Google it. I'm gonna Google it now and find out who this guy is.
You know who that is, Mufti Saab?
Who?
Dr. Mutaher watches movies on Channel 5
Oh,
on
one of
Sunday
those ones.
afternoon. You know those Wild West ones and the black and white
The ones that like tried to get their movie onto like mainstream, but no one accepted it. But then there was like this pirate station. I said, "We'll take it."
Those movies they put those on purpose on Sunday on Channel 5 in the afternoon, so you go to sleep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not that you complete the movie doc.
You know, it's interesting. As kids, like nowadays with the whole millennial thing issue and the advent of social media and these like social media apps becoming more and more like I don't know what's the word for it, man. Is it faster? Is it more sort of like because like
instant,
yeah, right? Instant reactions, instant,
validation.
Yeah, so it's like how much of this is having an effect on like the kids?
Yeah, so social media is a real pain because it does cause a lot of stress and anxiety. If you look at just Instagram or whatever, you're looking at snapshots of people's lives, and they're usually in a happy moment. And what people are seeing is that, oh, this is how everyone's life is, and why isn't my life like that? So they're getting stressed out by that. And if you're constantly seeing that, so I don't know, people say that you look at your phone like every so often, so it's like a couple of thousand times a day. And if you're constantly seeing that Instagram and people's pictures or whatever, of people having fun, and you're not, and you're just sitting, of food, what is that, dal? Then you're going to get sad and upset. And so same way, especially young minds, young children, they're so vulnerable. They're soft sponges, and they're taking this in, and they're seeing that their life is not like that. 100%. And they want that satisfaction. They want that enjoyment. They want that happiness that they can see. But they don't obviously see the full picture of what's going on. That's just a clip or moment of
and even it's
life.
fake most of the time.
And it's fake, fake, yeah. You see those little
subhanallah, man.
Yeah. And that's right. Or sometimes they play these games where they get hooked on these little games where they need to get this score or get this achievement. There was, I think you need to get this. They can get roped into things quite easily, especially being so young. I think there was one case I had where a child, there was a child. It was quite sad. They were depressed because they were seeing everyone else's life being so, all flowery, etc. And what she did was she found this game which allowed them to create an avatar, so she could be someone else online. And then so she was creating this person that she wanted to be, or show herself to the rest of the world that she was like this. Now, as a result of that, she was exposing herself to other people, and she became vulnerable. So,
what do you mean exposing?
So she was trying to make herself more beautiful. Yeah, it's essentially, yeah.
Oh.
That's what can happen. So they get trapped into this, and there's so many apps and things like that that are out there that make vulnerable our children. It's quite scary.
Like people that would generally or traditionally have been introverts and gone through whatever kind of stresses they would have had as introverts. Now they have like a platform to express themselves on where they don't have to be themselves necessarily, but they take energy from people, which is the same as an extrovert, because that's what an extrovert is. And they say it takes energy from a group of people. But introverts, like sometimes you see the loudest person on social media and you meet them in real life and you're like, whoa, you were a lion online. Like, your fingers type so fast, and then you meet
Mm.
them in real life, and you're like, okay, like what's going on here? But it's just their way of expressing themselves.
Mm.
I know a few of those. I know
Yeah,
a few.
I think the other thing is you know what you touched on, Mutahir, regarding the anonymity. It's that
Yeah.
people feel so safe in showing someone else, not showing their full name or not showing what they really look like, having this filter, and you know clearly social media is gonna play on that, and they're gonna develop filters that can make you look very different from what you are. And then I remember there was this movie, I don't know what it's called. Bruce Willis is in there, where they have this whole society of where they're all robots, and everyone's at home, like plugged into this VR system. And out in the real world, it's just the robots that are doing everything, and they're at home on pills. They look like very old and frail, and their bodies are kind of, I don't know what it's called. Maybe someone in the comments knows.
Was it on Channel 5?
Is he a taxi driver in the movie?
Ooh.
Burn,
one hole,
Mufti
bro.
Saab, that was a
Yeah, one hole.
proper burn. That was.
Sorry.
He was waiting for that
You know,
one.
in school days, Mufti Saab, when you go, I. That was-
I don't know that movie.
So I mean, the point I'm making is that when you see a lot of these kind of people online, it's even in the religious sort of community as well, where you'll see a person putting books up, showing books or showing some sort of like scholarly sort of like, you know, post, or maybe even putting up pious posts, you know, spiritual statements, quotes. Maybe it's to kind of see what reaction will people have. Allahu Akbar, the old scene.
Yeah, it could be for likes. You know what I mean? Some people have a little bit of anxiety. They need to do something to get likes and whatever shares. Frosty.
Kellogg's Frosties.
I'm just working with what I've got here at the moment. Normally, I'll pick up the one book that's in my house.
So you know when you okay, so let's say for example someone is like, okay, maybe in 20 years time they're gonna diagnose this problem. You know, they're gonna probably diagnose people who are hooked on social media and having all these problems. So you know how do you deal with these kind of people? Do you just tell them just take a break from social media?
I mean, that would be the ideal thing, but these people are probably addicted. And they're probably addicted to social media. So they're probably going to have withdrawal from not getting those likes, from not getting those shares, from not getting, you know, to look or reply to certain comments. So it's really difficult. It depends how deeply they're entrenched in it. If you can, just, you know, try and get it from the root of the problem. So don't give your child a free pass to use these apps willy-nilly for X amount of hours. So you need sort of like a timetable. You need to be strict in the time. So at least that way you got a bit of control. Because if you lose that control, which a child sometimes doesn't have sense of how much is enough. Sometimes adults don't know like when to stop. But
you know, interesting thing. I'll tell you, interesting thing. You know, like our elderly community. Have you seen them when they start becoming familiar with WhatsApp? They act very different from how we on WhatsApp. The kind of posts that they forward to each other, it's like very strange. You know, you'll see sometimes of people like watching a video that's like very gory. Like I can't stand these kind of things. You know, when someone puts a picture of like a car accident and someone's been involved in, and there's like body parts there. I hate looking at these kind of things. And you know, you'll see some people that are very desensitized to it, and will forward it to people. Oh, so and so died, and here's the picture of it. And maybe they're trying to put it up because they feel as though they need to be the first person to show everyone else. And then it's like, I remember like my mum, when she first learned WhatsApp, yeah, she just sends me all sorts of crazy things. And I'm saying, don't send these kind of things. You're not supposed to send these kind of things. These are like things that, can probably get you in trouble. But they don't realize it. They just see it as though it's like, something new to them. So that, maybe there's a maturity. There's a I don't know, maybe people need to go on some sort of training course, spiritual training course on how to use social media, limiting themselves to it.
On how to spot someone that seeks validity. It's an ancient old art I learned on social media. If something is going viral, rather than sharing it from the source that it's going viral, they'll feel the need to download this video and upload it on their own platform and make it like they discovered this viral video. You know what I mean, Altaf? There's a few culprits. I'm not going to mention who, but I see all the time, and you just look at it and it's like, bro, everybody knows. Flipping hell, you've left the logo of the company that uploaded it. Why didn't you just share it from there? Why did you need to share it in the way that you have? Like, it's weird. Some people, I don't know, man.
I'm on a
Okay,
WhatsApp. I'm on a Facebook group like with about 10,000 people on about food, right? And like, I'm one of the moderators on that group,
Yeah.
and it's really funny like where you see people who come there for the dopamine hits. So like they literally come, they'll post like 3-4 3-4 memes in a group, like, which is useless. We used to delete them, I just can't bother anymore. But you know, like what they do is they post those things and like they wait for a reaction, and you're like, why are they posting this, and why do they consistently and constantly do this? And it's like, is this the only dopamine fix that they get because there's like lots of people here and they don't really have that many friends or something like that? Like it goes through your mind that actually, why do you do this? And there's certain times then you will post something yourself. So I'll post loads of stuff about food. I'll constantly post about food, and you're like, okay, am I looking for validation? Am I sharing it? Why am I sharing it? And sometimes there's no reason to share it. You're just sharing it.
These days, what I'm sharing online is real life. So I showed you a picture of dal. You know, people post. No, there's no offense to Altaf. Altaf's into cooking. I get Altaf.
What do you mean? No offense to Dal and Altaf. What's this,
Yeah,
bro?
no. Altaf posts a picture of food. Yeah, Altaf's not showing it to show everyone.
Just because he's Gujarati, you don't have to kind of single him out. I eat dal as well. I'm sure Mutahir eats dal as well.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean, innit? Like, Altaf is someone that regularly posts food pictures, but I get that because I know he's into cooking and stuff like that. Some people, like I know, and I've seen people, like 8 people will go for a meal. Everyone will take pictures of everybody else's food and upload them throughout the week. Saying, look where I am. I'm eating this today. I'm eating that. And like, bro, all of you guys had that same meal together. Like, I've seen people do that to that level. And I do a little bit of youth work as well. And, you know, kids love brand names and stuff like that. So I'm taking the mick at everything these days. Here's a picture I took of my trainers that I bought for £30. And I painted the bottom of them red and made them look like £2,000 trainers. So I love trolling people.
What is it? What company is that? The one that have red at the bottom?
Christian Louis Vuitton, I think they're called.
Yeah, because I've seen like a few of those kind of like advertisements and things where they have supposed to be something quite high end. You know what I do?
One thing I see about trainers.
Let me tell you something about me. You know what I do? You know, sometimes when I go through like my social media and I see someone put something up, I sometimes think to myself, I feel sorry for them. Because I know they're putting this thing up because they want to feel good and no one's like hitting their likes. So I'll just hit a like. Not because I like it. It's just I feel to myself, you know what? Let me make their day for them. Let me hit the like button. Yeah, and they're probably thinking, you know what? Oh, so-and-so's hit the like button, you know. Must mean...
But then I'm going to have to check all my old posts now. Which ones you've liked? Don't like any of my posts anymore. You're throwing pity.
Sorry to turn into a serious thing. I remember I was reading a post. One of the students of Sheikh Shankiti, you know, the son, not the one that's passed away, the one that's in Saudi at the moment. One of his students, he was saying that, he was telling some of his students not to post too many pictures of food. And he was saying that he recently had a student, for the first time in his life, he tasted an apple. Imagine that. And he goes, you guys are flaunting all of this stuff and everything. He goes, he's only getting like exposed to like what you deem as normal things and the stuff that poor people eat. He's just had that now.
You know, it's interesting. You know, the Prophet ﷺ, he says that he said to Aisha radiallahu anha, he said, when you cook food, he said, make sure you add more soup to it and gift it to the neighbors. And that's interesting because the neighbors are going to smell the food. And it's like, rather than them stressing about, you know what, my neighbors, they've got luxury of this food.
Yeah.
And, just give them some of the food. Make them at least enjoy it. And it's like the Prophet ﷺ was teaching people that we should never try to make people jealous in any way at all. Right? Never even like be the means of jealousy. And so, you know, this idea of concealing your actions, and even if you achieve something great, you shouldn't go around boasting because you don't want someone else to feel upset about what you have. So it's like trying to strike the balance between being proud of your achievements, but at the same time not knowing exactly when not to show people certain things. Yeah, like, you know, when it came to like Yusuf alayhi salam's story, you know, like he saw the dream And then his father said to him, look, don't tell this dream to your brothers. It will hurt them. It's going to hurt them. Yeah. And you know, in our time, social media totally breaks that concept. You know, it's like the antithesis of, you know, trying to conceal your actions. And, you know, you just can't stop it. How do you, as a scholar even, like
Yeah.
as a scholar, how does a scholar put a check on himself? Because sometimes a scholar can go so extreme into this, he can start debating other scholars and he doesn't know where to draw the line. Yeah, and you know, even in those circles, it can have an effect.
Who doesn't want to be loved?
Allah. Hashtag Rumi.
Every depressed couple that breaks up, they use Rumi's quotes, Bajara.
Well, what was that thing about girlfriends and stuff and Rumi that you mentioned last time, Naf?
Don't forget that. That was-
After this
He's never
narrative.
gonna. Yeah, Mutaher, you don't know. Yeah, don't
It'll
worry.
affect my mental state. This
Yeah.
online bullying.
You don't know about this, bro. Okay, so let's just 10 more minutes and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, so when it comes to, for example, like, okay, now when it comes to the problems of today, we can't solve the problems of today. We tried to highlight today some of the issues that we have in our community. So we clearly have a problem in our community with this idea of mental illness versus, you know, Islamic sort of approaches to how to sort out these problems. One of the biggest problems that I sort of face, and I don't deal with them, is marriage problems. I think marriage problem is one of the biggest problems, and it's interesting how Islam has put so many procedures in place when it comes to divorce, how to resolve divorce, how to resolve, you know, family disputes. That it's like a lot of the problems that people are going to face within the community, and maybe Dr. Saab, maybe you can add to this and clarify me, correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of the problems that we are facing in our community is this marriage issue, yeah, where we have, like, for example, especially amongst the Muslim community, you have, you know, the taboo of divorce, right? That's one issue, and then the other issue at the same time is the taboo of you know, getting married to someone who's divorced. That's another issue that we have in our community, and these two are not directly connected, obviously, to mental problems, but the people that I deal with, I can see they are very, very, like, stressed about this. You know, you'll have, for example, like a mother who will prevent her ex-husband, from seeing the children, and this, you know, destroys the husband's life. Yeah, he has to financially provide for the children. At the same time, he has to go through court. I know, you know, one of my close associates, and this guy, you know, he's going through so much problem, like, you know, just for his kids. And you can tell this is something that's going to have an impact on the rest of his life as well. You know, it's going to have an effect on the family. It's going to have an effect on, you know, the Muslim community overall anyway. I think this is one of the big problems. So, I don't know, maybe Dr. Saab, you can...
Yeah, marriage is always an issue for a lot of people. Even before then, especially in the Asian community you're talking about. So there's a perception that, you know, you need to get married at a certain age, etc. And given the current situation, people are getting married at an older age. There's need to get an education at this stage and get a job, etc. So there's a lot of stresses that are put on, and sometimes these can be barriers for people to seek help, because they might say, "Oh, you know what? If I go and speak to someone, they're not going to understand my cultural issues, the cultural baggage that I've got." So, you know, they'll feel that, you know, they won't understand that the needs, or you know, because they might feel that a counselor might say, "Oh, you don't need to get married then." Do you know what I mean? And they're going to think, "Well, but I need to get married. This is the norm. This is what I have to do." They'll probably have that sort of understanding or perspective. And when they get married, again, there's lots of issues as to why couples may not get on. I think the most common one is like expectations, but I'm no marriage expert or anything. But people's perceptions of what marriage is very different to what it used to be 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And standards are, you know, quite high.
Yeah.
I think you probably know.
I think this is a very, very pertinent point as well. The issue of high expectations, and then like when some couples they see on social media as well, like what other couples are doing, going on holidays and taking pictures and just showing their smiley kind of faces, the few smiley faces in the week that they have. And then it's like the other couples obviously are gonna feel that because maybe it's a woman that she's having to take care of the children, and the husband is probably doing two jobs or something, and he's hardly at home, or maybe it's vice versa. It could be so many things, but I think it's a very important thing to understand the reality of marriage at the same time and the effect that it has on people. You see this in a lot of what you mentioned about the idea of some people getting married. It's like forced marriages. You got to marry your cousin. Yeah, no offense to anyone who's married their cousins, but you got to marry your cousin, or it's like you're going to bring shame to the family if you marry someone that you love. And then some families disowning their daughters simply because they've gone and married someone that they wanted to marry, and the parents didn't like it, and they've kind of like that daughter's been brought up, and now it's going to have an impact on that relationship as well. And what you said, the last thing that you said, I think that is very, very important, because what the issue with people, they come to me and they say to me, when I do my wudu, I'm doing my wudu and it takes me like half an hour to do wudu. I'm in the toilet, it takes me like 45 minutes just to clean myself. And you're thinking to yourself, whoa, why does it take so long for? And when I say to them, speak to your doctor, it's like they think the doctor will never understand. So do you ever have that when patients will come to you and you can feel that they think you're not going to understand their situation?
Yeah. So we're sort of trained to sort of communicate in a way where we're open and we're not judgmental. So it allows them to open up and speak and say what they want. And how we speak as well, because we don't want to challenge someone who has a strong belief in something. So let them express what they believe, and then slowly try and open up their mind to other options or other ways of seeing things, or getting them to seek help. Like they probably need a professional counselor, they probably need referral to some other service which can help them. Because it sounds like someone who does take 30 minutes to do wudu or whatever, they've got probably some underlying OCD or anxiety.
And how do you deal with that?
So you try and get them to admit that they've got a problem. That's probably the first thing. Admit that they've got a problem and it's not normal. Yeah. And then show them that there's help available. So if they know that help is available and people get better from this, or lots of people have this, and you show them the statistics or whatever, you talk through it, you talk to the different services that are available, then they can try those out. And you say, look, there's no harm in trying it out.
So if someone comes to me and says to me, look, I spend this long in praying my salat, I spend this long in cleaning myself, I spend this long in, just trying to pronounce at-tahiyatu, just for me, someone who doesn't know how to deal with this, what advice would you give me that I would give them, or just for anyone who is suffering from this?
So for you especially, being a scholar and everything, you'd give your Islamic advice, but you'd just say, look, speak to your doctor as well, just like you said before. So because these things are quite common and they're seen a lot by doctors, and they're managed quite easily. But they need to seek those, go through the right channels to get help for that problem.
Okay, so here's a let me give you an example. There was a guy.
Yeah.
He had this really bad OCD. Like, it was so bad. See, what I've seen with people with OCD, that eventually it leads them to get fed up of religion.
Yeah.
They don't stop belief. They believe, but they feel religion's too much for them, and they stop praying salat. They feel that guilt inside of them. And then when I say to them, look, just go visit the doctor. One guy, I remember, he said to me, look, the doctor is going to give me some medicine, and this medicine is going to make me sterile. That's what he said. Because the doctor is going to give me this medicine and sterile. So I didn't know what to say to him. I couldn't say to him, look, go on.
Yeah, so this is where you got to challenge their beliefs. So how do they know it's going to make them sterile? So this is where they need to speak to someone that knows what they're talking about, essentially. So, yeah, well, what medication is going to make them sterile, or how do they know they can get medication? They might get a different therapy. They might get a talking therapy, which most people do with OCD. They have a talking therapy to treat their OCD, and it's cognitive behavioral therapy. That's the treatment they get. I know a lot of people don't want to see their doctor, or maybe they can't get an appointment to see their doctor, and that's another complaint. But there are lots of services where they can just pick up the phone and just speak to a professional counselor. In Birmingham, there's something called Healthy Minds. You can go online. You can message them and arrange a meeting. You can do it online, or you can just ring up and have a telephone consultation.
What,
So we
what
don't
was
have
it
to have
called?
face-to-face.
What's
It's
that?
called Healthy Minds.
Okay, Healthy Minds. Yeah. So guys,
Healthy Minds.
you can check
And
this out.
if you're young, if you're between, I think, 16 to 25, there's something called Kooth.com, so KOOTH.com, and it's specifically for like young people, kids, because they've got their own separate issues. But a lot of the people that you're probably seeing are between the ages of 18 to 30.
Yeah.
So that's usually the age range where your OCD is quite pronounced.
And is it common in non-Muslims as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole of UK alone, 1 in 4 people suffer from mental health problems. So, do you know what I mean? That's just an overall picture.
Mufsab, the whole like wudu thing and praying. When I started practicing, I would do that. It would take me ages to do my wudu. It would take me like 25, 30, 40 minutes to do my wudu. It would take me like 20, 30 minutes to pray salah. And you'd go through that. And it wasn't, in this instance, for that instance, I don't think, for me anyway, personally, I don't think it was about going to see a doctor. I think it was just about the lack of Islamic education that I had. So I would have to think that everything, because I was taught from a young age, everything had to be done properly and perfectly. And so you were always chasing perfection. And then when you hear this modern voice coming to you, you're like, this guy doesn't know, like he doesn't know like my old teacher and my base for Islamic knowledge. And so everything would take me longer, and I wouldn't trust some of the voices that you would hear. So like some people would come up to you and say, oh yeah, this is not how you do it, this is how you do it. And you're like thinking in the back of your head, when you don't even pray salah, so what do you know about this kind of stuff? Like, like those kind of things, like you're not really a scholarly person. And because you're forming your Islam at that stage at the same time, right, it causes you that kind of confusion. So I found that actually by speaking to somebody who was like, a scholar, and sitting down with them and them explaining to me, don't worry, you can like do X, Y, and Z, you can do this once, or when you're praying your salah, if you forget, and they gave you like little tips and tricks, right? And you were firm on them because you understood that these people were, that they had some form of a connection. That really helped. That really helped me anyway, because I came out of it very, very quickly. But otherwise, when I first started practicing, you could tell my family would say she spends like 4 hours doing wudu, and like you're just trying to make sure that your the skin on your elbow is going, that little bit of white skin that you got on your elbow is still wet. And you're trying to understand all of these little things. So I think kind of like sometimes you gotta I think for me in that instance it wasn't really about kind of going to seek medical help. It was more about seeking guidance from somebody that I trusted.
You learned just Sahara, and then now you're wiping over gloves and everything, and just 3 seconds.
I'll wipe over. I won't repeat in this meeting.
I was just going to say, a lot of ulama probably have mental health issues, or people coming with mental health problems, and they're not sure what to do.
I think a lot of ulama might have mental health issues.
I'm sure there's lots of.
I think somebody's going to record that snippet, Mufti Sahib, and that's it. That's
actually, they say. I mean, I heard someone say this. Ibn Hazm. They say Ibn Hazm rahimullah had blood pressure problems. That's why he becomes very like angry in his writing, right? When he kind of like debates other scholars, and I understand this because, like sometimes a scholar, because sometimes there may be so much pressure on that scholar, for whatever reason. If you're saying that 1 in 4 people have mental issues, I'm not saying in a derogatory way that ulama have mental issues. What I'm saying is that they're humans as well at the end of the day. So if they're having to face, let's say, for example, answer 10 people's questions every week, 20 people's questions every week, and, for them, it's something which they have to kind of really think about. They have to, have this sort of like God consciousness inside of them, and the people are confiding in them. They have to keep people's secrets. It's clearly going to have some sort of effect on there. And, how do they deal with this? Maybe something like, praying tahajjud, maybe something like making dua to Allah, reciting Quran might, relieve their stress. I'm just kind of saying that there might be ways that they deal with it in different ways. But the reason I'm saying this is because I have actually heard from scholars themselves say that scholars will confide in other scholars and tell them their problems.
I was going to say that is what doctors do as well. So they call it Balint groups. So doctors get stressed out dealing with other people's problems. They have to like de-stress, and it's unloading on other GPs or other doctors. And I was going to say that's what ulama should do, is like get together, have some chai and just banter
All right,
over
guys,
whatever.
I have some problems. If any of you would like to invite me to your house, so I can...
Musab, you can come to my house to do that, Musab, if you want, but you got to answer my questions first, because you hate answering questions.
He hates answering questions, of course.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. Doctors have that, yeah.
Yeah, doctors have that.
Maybe scholars need to have that as well. I think one of the reasons, from like someone who has graduated and someone who teaches, I think one of the things that people tend to forget is scholars at the end of the day are human beings, and the problems that they will have is the same as other human beings, but the only difference is that there's going to be a pressure on them not to like publicize themselves, because when they start publicizing themselves, people are going to say, oh, you should have sabr, you should be the first person to have sabr and shukr to Allah. Yeah, you're going Jannah, you're going to take this many people with you to Jannah. So it's like they give them such an like this high pedestal they put them on. And as soon as a scholar slips, and on social media, some things come out about that scholar, and then you realize, you know what, that scholar is just a human being. What he does behind closed doors and behind the scene, right, is the same as what every other human does behind the scene. Yeah, and it's just like he's just trying to kind of not let people down for the things that he does. So
that's a stress in itself.
Stress in itself.
Yeah, it's a burden in itself. I was saying, if I don't know how many questions you get that are mental health, sort of an inkling that you have, it's like a mental health problem, like percentage-wise.
Me?
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm saying to you. What is mental health? If I can understand what falls under mental health, then because from what I see, like people who will contact me saying to me, like, I've actually stopped answering people's questions regarding divorce. I just tell them, you know what, go to a fiqh council, pay them, and they will actually, professionals will deal with your issue. And the reason is because I know divorce issues never end well, right? They always have to listen to the problem, and sometimes you're on the phone 20 minutes, listen to some one side of the story, and they expect you to kind of like understand them fully, and that they're in the wrong, they're the victim of the marriage, and the other one's the bully. Whereas, you have to listen to both sides, and then when you turn around and say, look, I have to be impartial here, and I have to go listen to you as one side, and I've got to listen to the other person as well. I can't make a judgment, and they get offended by that in many cases. So I think that's one of the main issues, and I've actually stopped answering those kind of questions. I tell people, when people like call me and they go to me, oh, I need to ask you a really important, sensitive masala, and say, is it about marriage? They go, yeah, why? I go, I'm not trained in that. And I just say to them, I'm not trained in it because I don't spend my time in trying to develop myself in how to deal with people's problems. If I, spent my time, if I did these courses, and if I went to these kind of counseling sessions where I can train myself to speak to people, alhamdulillah, I'll deal with it. But that's not my thing. There are people out there that actually do this. That's one kind of issue I regularly sort of face. Second issue is the OCD one. So the OCD one, it's a very common thing that I get. People privately messaging me and telling me that, I've got this, what do I do? And then when I say to them, look, please speak to your doctor, right? You need to get someone to speak to your doctor. Islamically, from an Islamic point of view, what I say to them is, look, you're allowed to take the leniest of opinions in all the madhabs. The most lenient opinion regarding wudu you can take, and it'll be fine. In fact, the scholars have said people who suffer from, they call it waswasa, they actually are relieved of some of their like responsibilities in Islam, simply because they're going through that stress. And the Prophet ﷺ said it himself in a hadith. He says, no Muslim is afflicted with any stress or any harm or pricked by any thorn except that Allah forgives their sins. There's this, like a virtue behind understanding this. So I think that would be a very common one. I think the other one would be things like, I can maybe say it's a mental issue. Things like when people are like so much into their kind of like trying to find the answer in Islam, right? That they kind of go to the level where they're trying to demonize everyone else, right? Vilify other Muslims, other scholars. So I feel that's a mental problem. Yeah, where like
debating could be like a mental problem as well, because you just want to argue or there could be lots of issues or scenarios. I was going to say that if there's a lot of problems that you feel that you're facing, there are courses, I think, for ulama by scholars who are psychiatrists. Like I think Dr. Asim and Dr. Daniel from the Alton Project, they did a course, I think, in London, and it was specifically to educate ulama to deal with or identify mental health problems. So that is worth, for any scholars that are listening out there, it's worth going to.
Okay, interesting. What was maybe these? If you can send me these links later on, what I can do is I can leave the links in the description. So if anyone does want to kind of contact these organizations or get more information, they can do it themselves, inshallah.
And Doc, before we do wrap up, inshallah, can you just run them names again if anybody is watching and they think that they need to seek some sort of medical advice?
Yeah, so obviously you can speak to your GP. You can, if you don't want to speak to your GP, then you can just pick up the phone or go on the website and look for Healthy Minds. You can probably just Google it, and that's based in Birmingham. If you want an international one, there's Kooth for the young people, so KOOTH, that's kooth.com. So that's like 16 to 25-year-olds. There are Muslim ones as well. There's like a Muslim helplines. So I think there's one called Muslim Youth, something like Muslim Youth Hotline. A small organization, but they offer like, someone who understands the Islamic culture and etiquettes, I guess. And there's loads more. There's Mind, MIND. They're good to see. And just NHS, just type in NHS and they'll come up with some helpful resources.
Inshallah.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair, man. I think this is very important. We haven't really kind of touched on hardly anything, when it comes to the kind of, because, like, for example, self-harm, suicide.
Today is World Suicide Prevention Day.
Is it?
Yeah.
Ajib. Yeah, and drug abuse, mental effects that people have after taking many years of drugs. Maybe that was something that we could have talked about. Anyway, is there any comments on the Facebook or any comments on the?
There was an interesting comment saying that you look like Harrods and the rest of us look like Lidl.
Allahu
Yeah.
Akbar. Yeah.
So
does that mean that I look like an Egyptian multi-millionaire or billionaire?
It's something to do with the lighting. Apparently, I look like I'm in a bulb factory. No, I think he's in a light bulb shop. He said, and the rest of us look like Lidl.
Allah.
I've got no choice. I'm sat under a lamp, by the way.
Tell that guy I've got a viral video that he can upload on his Facebook wall.
So anyway, any guys got anything to say?
I did find the discussion very beneficial today. So Jazakallah khair, Doc. That's what I want to say. Thank you for giving us your time.
And if anyone else, maybe does have any suggestions of maybe future topics that we can discuss regarding maybe this sort of like issue, domestic violence as well, and the support that people need as well. I think that's another important thing as well, and especially with this, the issue with nowadays with people having to fit into a certain identity right nowadays. I think that's another thing that needs to be discussed. Anyway, Jazakallah khair, guys. Dr. Saab, you have anything to say?
No, alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair for having me.
Thank you for all the time, man. Thank you for 2 hours, mashallah.
Definitely, Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.